Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. It's time, once again, for another depressing dose of dismal Disney. Disney's newest MCU movie, which will be its 35th, premieres in just under a month on Valentine's Day. And it's entitled Captain America Brave New World, but it was originally going to be called Captain America New World Order. But as I had spoken about in a video that I had released on December 21st, Captain America Brave New World is one of the most anticipated movies premiering in 2025, according to a poll that was conducted by Fandango. In fact, it was the #1 most anticipated movie in the poll. However, the first set of predicted domestic opening weekend box office numbers for Captain America Brave New World have been published, but they're not actually looking that great. So will the movie be able to break even? While I cannot give you an exact answer, because no one could possibly do that, what I can do is give you a probabilistically derived answer that will be based on financial information that's currently known about the movie, as well as statistical data derived directly from the box office performances of the previous 34 MCU movies. So let's take a look at the numbers to see what this movie's chances might be. But before proceeding, if you're enjoying this video, please consider pressing the like button, and if you'd like to see more of my content, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. And I want to convey my deepest thanks and appreciation to everyone who has subscribed. While this upcoming 35th MCU movie has been touted by Disney and Marvel Studios as being yet another Captain America movie, Captain America Brave New World, it has a completely different character and actor portraying the iconic Marvel Comics hero. In other words, in spite of this being a Captain America movie, it's not another Steve Rogers movie starring Chris Evans. Instead, the character that will be portraying Captain America in Captain America Brave New World is the character of Sam Wilson, whose superhero alias is Falcon, and as in several previous MCU movies, the character is being portrayed by the now 46-year-old actor Anthony Mackie. Now, while it's not uncommon in the comic book industry for new characters to don the costumes and titles of pre-existing superhero characters, when this occurs, it can lead to issues for longtime fans who prefer the original character in the role and aren't interested in the new character. And the reason for that is simple. Emotionally invested longtime fans are in long-standing parasocial relationships, which, like regular interpersonal relationships, can cause them very real pain and anguish when things occur that they can't control about beloved fictional characters and franchises. And I understand that perfectly well from personal experience. But what Hollywood forgets or deliberately ignores, these same longtime fans are also movie theater ticket buyers, who may be far less inclined to want to see a movie like Captain America Brave New World if they're upset about the loss of Steve Rogers, or if they're not happy about the mantle of Captain America not being passed on to his friend Bucky Barnes. And that's what's going to make or break this movie. How many people are going to buy movie theater tickets to see Captain America Brave New World, and will it be enough for the movie to break even? As I had referenced in a video that I had mentioned a few minutes ago, back in July of 2024, the World of Real website released figures for how much Captain America Brave New World cost to produce. It's a figure that's somewhere between $350 million to $375 million, which is not far below the $400 million that Disney and Marvel Studios spent to produce 2019's Avengers Endgame, but it's quite a bit more than the $300 million production budget for 2018's Avengers Infinity War. It is, however, in the same ballpark as the $365 million production budget for 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron. In other words, the production budget for Captain America: Brave New World is as high as the 3 most expensive MCU movies to date, but unlike those movies, it doesn't have an ensemble cast. Now, before I calculate what the movie's estimated break-even point range might be, I'm going to use the midpoint of the movie's reported production budget range of $350 million to $375 million, which is a value of $362.5 million. And when I multiply the estimated $362.5 million production budget for Captain America: Brave New World by 2.5 and 3.0 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget, that yields an estimated break-even point range for the movie of around $906.3 million to $1,087.5 million. And to give you some additional perspective, that estimated break-even point range is between the $878.3 million in global gross box office revenue that 2017's Spider-Man: Homecoming earned, and the $1,129.6 million in global gross box office revenue that 2019's Captain Marvel earned. And neither of those movies needed to earn as much as Captain America: Brave New World does in order to break even. So knowing that the estimated break-even point range for the movie is around $906.3 million to $1,087.5 million, let's ask the following question. How much would Captain America: Brave New World need to earn during its domestic opening weekend to ensure that it can possibly do that? I can actually statistically estimate this based on the MCU's overall average weekly drop and its overall average domestic share, along with their standard deviations based on the performances of the past 34 MCU movies. And those past 34 MCU movies have an overall average weekly drop of 38.05%, with a standard deviation of 6.41%, and they also have an overall average domestic share of 41.6%, with a standard deviation of 6.97%. Those create ranges of possible average weekly drops and possible domestic shares of 31.64% to 44.46% and 34.73% to 48.46% respectively, that are both plus or minus 1 standard deviation wide. And here's where the mathematical magic begins, ladies and gentlemen. In both cases, the lower the average weekly drop and the lower the domestic share are, the smaller a movie's domestic opening weekend box office needs to be in order for it to have a chance of being able to break even. But conversely, the higher the average weekly drop and the higher the domestic share are, the more a movie will need to earn domestically during its opening weekend in order for it to have a chance of being able to break even. And here's the magic, ladies and gentlemen. If I multiply the mid-range estimated break-even point of $906.3 million by both the lowest expected average weekly drop of 31.64% and the lowest expected domestic share of 34.73% from the ranges that I cited earlier, I get a value of $119.2 million. In other words, if Captain America: Brave New World can earn at least $119.2 million during its domestic opening weekend, then as long as the movie is able to retain most of its audience from week to week and earn nearly 2/3 of its revenue from overseas, then it might have a chance of at least being able to marginally break even. And it's very important to remember that $119.2 million is the absolute bare minimum domestic opening weekend box office that Captain America: Brave New World needs to earn in order to have any possibility of being able to break even. If the movie's domestic opening weekend box office is below $119.2 million, then its chances of being able to break even will be statistically too small to be relevant. But conversely, if Captain America: Brave New World loses a lot more of its audience from week to week at a rate of around 44.46%, its domestic share is nearly evenly split at a value of 48.46%, and it needs to earn as much as its upper estimated break-even point of $1,087.5 million in order to break even. When I multiply those three values together, that yields a resulting product of around $195.7 million. In other words, if Captain America Brave New World has weak domestic earnings during its theatrical run, and its international box office earnings can't make up for it, then the movie will need an even higher domestic opening weekend box office of at least $195.7 million in order for the movie to have a chance of being able to break even. So, ladies and gentlemen, based on the performances of the past 34 MCU movies and the very high estimated break-even point range of $906.3 million to $1,087.5 million that Captain America Brave New World needs to overcome, the minimum domestic opening weekend box office that the movie needs to earn in order to have a chance of being able to break even is a range from at least $119.2 million to $195.7 million, which has a midpoint of around $157.5 million. But is this a statistically reasonable range? Historically, the average domestic opening weekend box office for the past 34 MCU movies is $135 million, with a standard deviation of $69.6 million, which means that the vast majority of the MCU's past 34 movies have had domestic opening weekend box office earnings that were between $65.4 million to $204.5 million. So yes, the $119.2 million to $195.7 million that Captain America Brave New World needs to earn during its domestic opening weekend in order to have a chance of being able to break even falls within plus or minus one standard deviation of the MCU's historical average domestic opening weekend box office of $135 million. So my calculations aren't unreasonable or unusual. So having established all of this, what is the actual predicted domestic opening weekend box office for Captain America Brave New World? On January 12th, Deadline predicted $86 million to $95 million. And that falls very short of the $119.2 million to $195.7 million that the movie needs to earn during its domestic opening weekend in order to be able to have a chance of being able to break even. So what this says, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still watching this video, is that no, Captain America Brave New World probably isn't going to break even. Because using the range of possible average weekly drops that I shared earlier in the video, with this predicted range of domestic opening weekend box office earnings, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $193.4 million at the low end, $230.5 million at the mid-range, and $280.5 million at the upper end. Then if the movie's domestic share is at the 48.57% upper end of the range of expected domestic shares, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $398.2 million at the low end, $474.5 million at the mid-range, and $577.6 million at the upper end. But if the movie's domestic share is closer to the MCU's overall average of 41.6%, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $465 million at the low end, $554 million at the mid-range, and $674.3 million at the upper end. And finally, if the movie's domestic share ends up closer to 34.63%, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $558.6 million at the low end, $665.5 million at the mid-range, and $810 million at the upper end, which is currently the best that Captain America Brave New World can hope to earn given the information that's currently available. So from the best case to the worst case, Captain America Brave New World could lose as much as $96.2 million to $689.3 million in global gross box office revenue, which would equate to Disney and Marvel Studios losing as much as $48.1 million to $344.6 million, depending upon all of the various factors. But in no case is it currently likely that the movie will be able to break even. So is Captain America Brave New World going to be DOA? As of right now, that's what it's looking like, but we'll have to wait and see if it can develop any additional interest from moviegoers before it premieres. But please let me know what you thought of this video and what you thought of my projections in the comments below. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to each and every one of you who has subscribed to support this channel. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, and Blue Sky by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.